Sunrise on an Amish farm in Lancaster County, and the first person awake finds something wrong before he finds out why. A dusting of gnawed corn husks on the crib floor, a smell that shouldn't be there, sharp, an animal, cutting through the usual barn mix of hay and manure and horse sweat. By the time the family puts it together, whatever's been getting into the corn crib has had almost 2 weeks to work undisturbed, and there's no phone to call an exterminator with and no truck that's going to pull up the lane and fix it by lunch. What happens over the next 24 hours decides whether 6 months of stored grain and the animals that depend on it make it through the winter. You're the one who finds it first, usually. Barn chores start before the sky's fully light, in that grey half hour when your breath still fogs and the only sound is hooves shifting on wood. The corn crib is the first stop, because the horses eat before you do. This morning the floor near the base of the slats is dark and matted with droppings, far more than a few mice would leave in a season. And when you pull back a loose board, you don't see one animal, you see movement, a lot of it. Rats, not mice. Norway rats, thick-bodied and already fat on a month of unguarded feed, scattering into the seams of the wall the second the light hits them. Where you find that many out in the open at dawn, there are several times as many still working inside the walls where the lantern can't reach. The first hour is quiet panic, dressed up as calm. You don't wake the whole house yet. You check the second crib, 40 feet across the yard, boots crunching on frost-stiff grass, because rats don't stay put once one nest gets crowded. They push out, looking for the next easy meal. Sure enough, there's fresh gnawing on a support post there too, pale wood showing through where the weathered grey has been chewed away. That's the moment the day stops being a chore and starts being a race. Every hour spent deciding what to do is an hour they spend eating. And a Norway rat colony can strip a corn crib faster than most people believe until they've stood in one and watched it happen with their own eyes. By the time the family sits down to a rushed breakfast, half of it eaten standing up at the counter, the plan is already forming. And it has almost nothing in common with what an English neighbour down the road would do by 9 that same morning. There's no bait station ordered overnight, no pest control contract, no chemical fogger sealed up in the barn until the fumes clear. What you have is what the farm has always had. 2 terriers bred and kept specifically for this, already whining at the kitchen door because they can smell the morning's find on your boots. A dozen hand-set traps pulled from a shed shelf and checked over for rust. 5 kids old enough to carry a bucket and quiet enough not to spook a rat back into the wall before the dog gets there. And an 80-year-old barn built by people who were dealing with this exact problem long before anybody's grandfather was born, which turns out to matter more than anything bought this morning would have. Word travels fast on a farm road, even without a phone line. By mid-morning, a neighbour's already walked over, boots crunching gravel up the lane, unasked, the way it works here, because everyone remembers whose barn got the same trouble 2 summers back, and whose corn got saved because 4 extra hands showed up before noon. Nobody frames it as a favour owed, it's just what you do. The same instinct that raises a barn in a day sends a man across 2 fields with his own trap box under his arm when word gets out that a neighbour's crib is compromised. Mid-morning is the ugly part nobody puts in the postcard version of farm life. Clearing the crib means pulling boards, one at a time, in a dust that's equal parts corn chaff and dried droppings, thick enough that everyone works with a cloth tied over the nose and mouth, even though nobody says the word disease out loud. The smell gets into your clothes and stays there through supper. Rats carry more sickness than almost anything else on a working farm, and the real danger this morning isn't losing the corn. It's a kid getting bitten cornering one in a tight space, or the family's own kitchen stores getting contaminated by animals that have already been walking through grain meant for people, not just livestock. That's the threat that turns this from an inconvenience into something closer to an emergency. It's not just feed anymore, it's what's sitting in the pantry too. The terriers earn their keep here in a way that's hard to watch and impossible to look away from.
No poison means no waiting. No slow die-off somewhere in a wall you can't reach and won't smell until it's too late to fix. It means a dog going into a space a grown man can't fit into and coming back out with the problem solved the old way, over and over, for as long as the boards keep coming up, tails and all, laid in a growing line along the crib wall where the kids keep the count. By midday, the tally from the first crib alone runs past 24, and everyone doing the counting already knows, from the fresh gnaw marks and the droppings piling along the floor joists, that the second crib is worse. Afternoon is when the work stops being about the corn and starts being about the cows. A dairy operation like this one runs on stored feed, getting the herd through months when the pasture's frozen solid and there's nothing green left in 40 acres. A compromised feed supply doesn't just mean less milk. It means sick animals in the dead of winter with no easy fix, no emergency delivery of replacement feed showing up in a snowstorm. So the second crib gets the same treatment as the first. Boards up, dogs in, traps set along every beam where droppings show a run. Except this time, there's less daylight left to do it in, and twice the damage already done. Hands are raw from splinters and rope burn by now, and nobody's stopped since breakfast except to gulp water at the pump. You start hearing the same phrase pass between the adults, not panicked, just flat and tired. Whatever's left has to hold until spring. There isn't a second harvest coming to bail anyone out if this one's ruined. By mid-afternoon, the youngest kids have been given the job of hauling the recovered, undamaged corn to a third rat-proofed bin, while the adults keep clearing, and it's slow, bucket by bucket, because rushing it means dropping ears in the dirt where the whole cycle could start again next season. Nobody complains about the pace out loud, even with corn dust still stinging the eyes and the afternoon sun starting to slant low through the barn doors. Slow and finished beats fast and wasted, and that math gets taught here before a kid's old enough to understand why it matters. There's no OSHA inspector walking onto this property, and no exterminator's truck idling in the driveway, and by late afternoon, with the light going amber and the air finally cooling off the day's sweat, that absence starts to feel less like a limitation and more like the whole point. Every hour of this day runs on something that would look primitive to a stranger. A wooden trap worn smooth and dark from decades of hands resetting it, and works because it's been refined for longer than pest control companies have existed. The traps aren't leftover technology, they're chosen technology. Tools that don't need batteries or a truck to restock, on a farm that has never once had either. By early evening, exhausted and behind, someone finally explains the thing that actually made this day survivable. And it isn't the dogs or the traps at all. It's the barn itself. That fieldstone foundation under the corn crib wasn't built that way for looks. Bank barns in this part of Pennsylvania were designed generations ago with tight stone bases and raised wood floors, specifically because rodents can't tunnel through packed fieldstone the way they can through dirt or a cracked concrete slab. The design is the reason this invasion stayed contained to two structures instead of spreading into the spring house or the home cellar where the family's own winter stores sit. Nobody built this barn thinking about a pest outbreak generations later. They built it assuming one would eventually come, because it always does, and made sure the building itself would fight half the battle before anyone picked up a trap. That's the part that reframes the whole day. This wasn't a family caught flat-footed by something nature threw at them. It was a defense built into the architecture, the animals, and the daily rhythm of the place. Cold stone underfoot and warm hay overhead, all of it assembled long before this particular morning, waiting to be used exactly like this.
The faith that shapes how this community lives, plain, deliberate, distrustful of anything that makes you dependent on someone else showing up to fix your problems, is the same reasoning that put terriers in that barn and stone under that crib. It isn't a workaround for not having modern tools. It's a philosophy that happened to leave the farm better equipped than the tools would have. Night falls with both cribs cleared, boards nailed back tight, and a count nobody wants to say out loud because it's higher than anyone hoped and lower than it could have been.
But the work isn't finished because rats are most active after dark, and the family knows the ones that got away tonight will be testing those same boards again before sunrise. So someone stays up, a lantern in the barn, a dog at their feet, checking traps every couple of hours until the sky starts to lighten again. Because the difference between a bad day and a ruined winter is whether anyone's still watching when the last of them try to come back. Ask anyone who's lived through a night like that what the hardest part was, and it's rarely the physical work. It's the math running in the back of your head the whole time, the quiet calculation of how much is left, how much is safe, and whether the herd makes it to spring on what's still sitting in that crib. Was one exhausting hands-on day worth more than any convenience a poison or a phone call could have offered? For a farm built to run without either, the answer was never really in question. It just took 24 hours to prove it again.